Hello, everyone, and welcome to this vivacious broadcast, emergency broadcast, Chat Night Africa. Chat Night Africa Live from Washington, D.C., metropolitan area. On the show this week, you and the Lord.
It's all right here. It's dynamite.
Chat Night Africa Live. Transmission Director, Mombali, Mombalingwa. Production Supervisors, Professor Ben Bongan and Dr. B. Tatsong Famundam. This is Studio Manager Beatrice Famunen. This is Chat Night. The power of Chat Night. You and the law. This week at Chat Night Africa. Production assistants Emmanuel Wayindi, John Tanto, and Uncle Lord Benson at Foncha Street, Bamenda.
I'm coming back.
Social media platforms, manager and video editor, Sir Roger Full. And my special advisor, production assistant, Eno Daniel. This is Chat Night Africa.
We put wood down. When we're down, it's out of sight. It's all right here.
Chat Night Africa is compiled and presented by Divine Chamukong. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Chat Night Africa. Ignorance of the law, it is said, is not an excuse in a court of law. Now, before you dismiss this with, well, Divine, I'm a law-abiding citizen, let me tell you this. People who find themselves before a judge in a court of law are not there because they intentionally walked themselves into problems. That's why you should pay attention to this broadcast. Whether you live in the United States or not, guaranteed, by the time 90 minutes end, you would think and talk like a lawyer. Once again, welcome to Chat Night Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, join me now in welcoming the top-notch, high-powered attorney, Aneneba Akufo, on the platform. Thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation to Chat Night Africa. Before we start with some razor-sharp questions, people would like to know, who is Attorney Aneneba Akufo?
Thank you so much, Mr. Divine Chamukong. And again, it's a pleasure coming again back on your platform, Chat Night Africa, which is very informative for our citizens here in the United States and all over the world. Again, my name is Ananeba Akufo. I'm a licensed attorney and counselor at law in the great state of New York. I live here down in Georgia, in Atlanta. My practice basically down in Georgia is federal immigration law. And very soon I'll be delving in other aspects of the law. But for now, that's my principal focus. I am a human rights activist. I do support the rights of people to self-determine where they are, as long as the law is concerned. I speak for people who cannot speak. And the one aspect of me is the one thing I really focus on again in my life is about the issue of decolonization. Making our brethren back in Africa free, even if it means telling them exactly what they do not know, because the colonialism has never absolutely gone away in Africa. We are still being colonized by the European masters, call them masters the way you want to call them, but it's a process, it's an ongoing process, but unfortunately we find ourselves where we are at these twilights of our generation, and we are still being looked upon as lesser people than the way we're supposed to be accepted. So, in a basic form, that's who I am, and hopefully we have a very interesting program today.
Yes, we will, because we will open our phone lines for questions from members of the public. Lawyer Ananeba Akufo, I'd like us to start with two issues that make news here in the United States. The Supreme Court of the land is about to have its 9th justice. Why do presidential nominations of justices to the US Supreme Court trigger such brassy, dissonant debates? How does a conservative judge rule differently from a liberal judge?
Well, the composition of the Supreme Court, because again, the Constitution of the United States created just one court, and that's the Supreme Court. Every other court is created by Congress. So the Supreme Court, it's the judiciary of the United States. The executive is the presidency, and of course the legislature is the bicameral houses of the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House of Representatives. So getting a seat at the U.S. Supreme Court is something that people take with a lot of recognition. The number 9 came up in the 1869. That's when they dwindled the court to 9 people, to 9 justices. So whether you were liberal or you were a conservative, it is not really how it's supposed to be. The reason why they're calling some of them liberals and calling some of them conservatives is because the conservatives, they look upon themselves as the originalists. And the originalists are those who interpret the Constitution the way it was written. And if you look at the Constitution the way it was written, today we would still, the black man in the United States will still be subjected as a slave. Although we have the 13th Amendment, which did away with slavery. But if you look at the original text of the Constitution, that's what it was, because you were a slave and you had no freedom. Women were not allowed to vote, or they had very limited rights, just like black people. So that's where the originalists are. And the modernists, the way you put it, or liberal or conservatives, the way they look at the modern approach in approaching the modern look of approaching the Constitution is you interpret the Constitution following the evolution of society. So if you take an example like the landmark case Brown against the Board of Education, I think that was in 1956, which overturned other precedents in the United States. Schools were segregated. A black person could not go to the same school with a white person. So that particular case is a landmark case. It overturned that the previous precedents in the United States. So if you're seeing that there is a little bit so much hustle when it comes to getting justice at the Supreme Court, and there's so much, fighting between the conservatives and the liberals is because America is strictly divided into two at the moment. In the past, like the current justice, Justice Amy, who is under the process of being confirmed right now. She's a very bright woman. If you listen to her speak, you understand that this is somebody you want to interpret the law on your behalf because she knows what she's talking about. But because they just certain things that society has been accustomed to, and they feel that she is a threat to that particular aspect of society, they now are afraid because they want society to be strictly composed of conservatives or liberals. And if she's coming as a conservative voice, it sends chills down the spines of those people who want the constitution to follow modern day trends. So that's the fight, and that's the biggest problem with getting somebody at the seat of the Supreme Court of the United States. But in the past, it normally wasn't like that. You could actually have someone like Justice Amy, and you have like 70 people voting to confirm that lady. But now it will be strictly under party lines.
My guest this week is attorney at law Aneneba Akufo. Lawyer Akufo, another topic that makes news is the deportation of so many Africans, among whom are about 81 people from the country Cameroon, some from Nigeria. The question that many people texted me when I requested that I wanted questions is, does the law in the United States provide any protections for people who came in here illegally? Now, do you call them undocumented immigrants or illegal immigrants, sir?
Well, it just depends. And again, the deportation of these people from the United States, it's a travesty. It's a sad day for the United States because it shouldn't have happened the way it happened. But if you look at the composition of those people who were deported, some had exhausted, from what I've heard, some had exhausted all their legal processes in the United States, and they had to be deported. But the fact that you're sending them back to the country where they were coming from, that's a travesty, because US Code 1158 actually tells you that you cannot send somebody who has, set foot on the United States seeking asylum protection to send that person back to the same country where that person is fleeing from. You cannot do that. The code says it. But because the current administration is so toxic the way it does stuff, they can virtually flout every law and do what they're doing and do it with impunity. Okay, whether they were legal or illegal here in the United States, those are two different terminologies. Let's say this, but if we're talking about these non-immigrants who came here, these asylees seeking for protection, once they step their foot at the United States border and tells the immigration officer that they're coming here because they're fleeing persecution, automatically they're no longer illegal. They're here present. They're legally present in the United States because they've exhibited an intention to seek for protection in the United States. So they are not illegal at that moment. But if you're saying somebody is illegal, that's a situation where somebody just sneaks across the border, wandering through the desert, has no intent of seeking political asylum, just to find somewhere in the United States to stay. Okay, that's an illegal alien because he has no reason to be in the United States. But with the asylees that came to the United States from Cameroon and other African countries and other countries, they were not illegally present in the United States. Then the other aspect is, let's say you fly to the United States, you go to your home country, you seek for a visa, they grant you a visa, you come to the border, you seek admission at the border, they admit you to the United States, they say, okay, you should stay 6 months. After 6 months, you have to leave. Okay, beyond 6 months, you decide not to leave, so you overstay your visa. So at that moment, you're still not illegally present in the United States, but you're unlawfully present in the United States. You've broken the law by not leaving, but you're not an illegal because you had legal presence in the United States at some point, but you just overstayed. So you're unlawfully present in the United States. So that's the two distinction there, being illegal and being unlawfully present in the United States.
When these folks were put on the plane back to the continent, there was a call. I heard Mr. Chris Anu, who is fighting for what they call restoration of southern Cameroons in Cameroon and Africa. He said they should call their senators, people should call senators and state governors. Now, the question I have isn't about what Chris Anu said per se. What my question is, could any legal interventions have stopped the deportations of those Africans back to Africa?
Yes, it is very possible. It could have been done. Again, we find ourselves in a very toxic atmosphere in the United States right now. So because, immigration law is not written by the president, it's not written by the Supreme Court, it is written by Congress. And that's why we get congressional, support when cases like this do happen. And I think Representative Karen Bass and some other people, they penned some memoranda in trying to see if they could stay these people back in the United States. So now you have to approach that particular question you asked me in two different ways. Number one, did these people exhaust all their legal, sources here in the United States? So did they see an immigration judge? Did they go through the appeals process? No. And what happened at the appeals process? Did they remand the case for it to be retried again, or did they send back the case because there was no issue again to be retried? So at that moment, you've exhausted everything. Now they have to put you on a plane to go back to your country. And of course, the law tells you, the Refugee Convention tells you, you cannot do that. You cannot send that person to another country, to the same country where he's fleeing from, because guess what? He will be persecuted. It's just human logic. Because you're fleeing, you come back, they will say, okay, now you went and exposed us in a foreign country. Now you're coming back. What do you expect of us to do? They will try to do everything to extract information from that person. And of course, they will torture them. That I'm very, very convinced, because if we look at history, we've seen lots of examples where, they do the refoulement, where you forcefully send somebody back to where he was being persecuted, and they end up, some of them would be killed. That I am pretty sure some of them would be killed. So about congressional intervention, yes, Congress can actually intervene and try to stop this from happening, because these people, I don't know how their cases were being presented before the immigration judge or at the level of the Board of Immigration Appeals. I don't know how the cases were, but if the cases had some substance, not just the procedure, but some substance in it, then I'm pretty sure they could have stayed this deportation to look into these cases again. But again, these interventions, you have to know when you bring these interventions. You don't bring them at the tail end where everything is being exhausted. You bring them when there is still hope. At the level of the immigration judge, that's when you bring most of these complaints, especially like the Cameroonians who were decrying discrimination and lack of access to the law, due process. They were not being granted. They went on a hunger strike. Yeah, that was the moment when they could have rallied to get congressional support to see if they could do something for these guys, to try to assist them, because at that moment they had not even seen a judge, because most of them were left at the side of Mexico. They were left outside the United States. They had not set foot, because again, the current system made it absolutely difficult for these people to just walk into the United States. When they come in, what Mr. Trump did, what the president did with Stephen Miller, who is like the White House guy who writes most of these immigration laws now, through executive orders, decided that, okay, your first place of safety, if you go through Guatemala, you go through Ecuador, you go through all those Panama and all those Latin American countries, and you get to Mexico, you should seek asylum in Mexico. You should not come to the United States. So that's like a safe zone for them to do it. And that's why they were forcefully asking these people to seek asylum in Mexico, or you stay there. When your time comes, you come to the United States and get due process. So this is what these people protested against. And unfortunately, they found themselves on the wrong side. But that's where Congress was supposed to come in, because the laws were not written for Mr. Trump, for the president to do what he did. No, that's not what the law.
Two quick questions, sir. Yeah. What would congressmen or senators do different from what you, a lawyer, would do to stop somebody from being deported?
Well,
Because I thought when you talk about senators and members of Congress, you're talking politics. Talk about Anene Akufo, you're talking about the law. So what would they do different from you?
Well, we interpret the law that they write, that Congress writes, right? We interpret the same law that they write. So, but
Congress would not be writing a law when people are being put on the plane, would they?
But that's what I'm saying. They can actually stop the process. They can actually issue a stay. You know, they can actually issue a stay and call the Department of Homeland Security or ICE, who's trying to deport this people, and say, okay, no, you have to halt this deportation. You have to. If it's overwhelming, if it's overwhelming, they will do it. I mean, we've pulled people out from the planes. People who've boarded planes and they're about to leave, we file what is called a stay of execution, and they bring them back. And we get due process.
Sir,
yes.
You're not too thrilled with the way President Trump handles this. He's not doing anything that President Obama didn't do. As a matter of fact, there are some sources that suggest that Obama deported a lot more people than Trump is doing.
How
do you make your case?
No, again, you know, Obama was following the law. Both of them are following the law. But the thing is, President Trump has, you know, he's done it in a rogue manner because he's forced people to seek asylum in a country where they are not comfortable doing. Mexico is not as safe as Guatemala or any other Latin American country. They're fleeing from those countries to come to the United States. United States is safer. So you cannot force people to seek asylum in Mexico when Mexicans themselves, they don't even grant asylum to people. They themselves are fleeing their own country to come to the United States to seek asylum. Then when people are coming for protection under the Refugee Convention, you tell them to seek protection in a very unsafe area.
Let me make sure that we get this clear, sir.
Yes. But Mr. Nchamu Kongo,